is Ashley. I hope you're having a good night. And once again, I'm so happy to be here, about to share some of my favorite records with you from my collection. These are all vintage. I don't think I have any reissues in this pile. They're arranged more or less in chronological order. Some of my favorite artists, as well as some of my favorite albums by those artists. It's mostly rock. I think might have a couple of exceptions in there. I've always been drawn to vinyl albums, and as I mentioned in a previous video, I've been collecting these albums since I was in high school, and what you see here, I hope you find interesting. I will tell you that these albums are not in perfect shape, the covers at least, but when I buy an album, the only thing I care too much about is whether it's free of scratches and it plays well. So I'm not the kind of collector who has perfect editions of these wonderful, wonderful works of art. But that doesn't bother me, because I primarily buy them to listen to them. I absolutely love to look at the artwork the artists have chosen to include, as well as the styles from different eras of rock and roll, as I have mentioned previously in my first record video. So, I'm going to start with this Rolling Stones album, Flowers. Now, this album was a compilation album released in the United States, I believe in 1967. So I will show you the cover. Has so many really good songs on it, many of which had been previously released as singles prior to the release of this particular album. I can go ahead and read you some of the songs that are on this album. Ruby Tuesday, Have You Seen Your Mother, Standing in the Shadow, Let's Spend the Night Together, Lady Jane, Out of Time, My Girl, Mother's Little Helper, Ride On Baby, Sitting on a Fence. I really like the psychedelic style in which the title of the album is written. The magnificent colors that just sort of seem to vibrate within the design. And truth be told, I've always thought it's a little bit humorous to see the heads of each of the band members growing out of this like actual flowers is very literal interpretation of the title and the artwork. At the center we have Mick Jagger. Mwah. And there's another flower shape featured on the back, which has the heads of the band members in a single flower, rather than in the little rosebud configuration they have on the front. But so many great songs on this album. Ruby Tuesday is one of my favorite melancholy songs of all time. It still gets me. I love Mother's Little Helper. Great kind of tongue-in-cheek humor in it, and just a really good groove. So, next we have another Rolling Stones album, which I believe this year has been or is going to be re-released. Get your yayas out. So this was recorded at a concert, I think, in Monterey, California. I hope I'm right on that. Anyway, I think the concert was in 1969, and the release of the album, I'm thinking, was 1971, but it could have been a year earlier, so I'm honestly not sure, but it's one of the great concert albums, in my opinion. Among the songs on this album are Jumpin' Jack Flash, Carol, Love in Vain, Midnight Rambler, Sympathy for the Devil, Honky Tonk Women, Street Fighting Man, and I like the design on the back as well. You have the audience back here out of focus, so I really like how the out of focus audience members create a kind of texture that the images of the band members contrast a bit with. And you have images of the performance surrounding a central image of Mick Jagger in a great outfit, of course. Check it out. Next, we have an album that is among my favorite albums, and it is Neil Young, After the Gold Rush. (1971). So, here's Neil Young. On the inside, you have this wonderful kind of moody picture of him, maybe writing a song, maybe in an artistic reverie. But I love this picture. And on the back, close-up of some patched jeans. Just a nice moody cover. And among the songs on this album are Tell Me Why, After the Gold Rush, Only Love Can Break Your Heart, Till the Morning Comes, Oh Lonesome Me, When You Dance I Can Really Love, I Believe in You. Now, this particular album became one of my favorite albums after my first heartbreak. Before that, I was in high school and someone recommended this album to me. It was actually my art teacher at the time, and I listened to it, and to be perfectly honest, it didn't really speak to me. I didn't get it. But after my first heartbreak, when I was, I guess, about 17, I revisited this album. And somehow it all made sense. And now I love it. And years later, I love it. Hasn't faded. And in particular, at the time when I rediscovered it, I was listening to Only Love Can Break Your Heart. And it was perfect. Sometimes it seems like when I'm melancholy or going through a difficult time, listening to a sad song actually doesn't make me sadder, but helps me exorcise the demon, so to say. So, it's a great album. It's classic, but I really never get tired of it. And I'm noticing now in the album credits they even have a credit for the patches on the jeans. And one more kind of interesting thing about this album is the little insert that comes with it that appears to be a photocopy of song lyrics written out by hand, and also in this corner over here, perhaps a set list, or maybe they were experimenting with the order in which the song should be placed on the album. It's so much fun to read the lyrics, and that's one of the perks of having an actual album as opposed to a download. And in this case, it's even more fun to be able to read them in original handwriting. So I love how messy it is. It just feels like the writing was just pouring out from his soul. It's so good. And you can see the paper's kind of yellowing here, but it's a nice addition. And next, I have, keeps moving, Joni Mitchell's Blue. To me, Joni Mitchell is one of the most outstanding female singers, or singers at all, of our time. And this album is just so beautiful. It's soulful. It's fabulously put together with really interesting, amazing melodies, and executed with the perfection of Joni Mitchell's voice. And some of the songs on this album, which is really an excellent album, are just so amazing and touching, thoughtful. The lyrics are clever, interesting, and somewhat poetic, I think. And I just feel like there's a certain spirit of this album that unifies it. Again, that's one of my favorite things about an album, if the songs don't nearly seem like individual entities, but rather fit together as some kind of artistic whole. I really like that. And this is an album that kind of exemplifies that for me. You can see all the lyrics here. And I'm going to read you the titles of some of the songs. I like this sound. All I Want, My Old Man, Little Green, Carrie, Blue, California, This Flight Tonight, River, A Case of You, Last Time I Saw Richard, I'm going to read you, if you don't mind, some lyrics from one of my favorite songs on this album, A Case of You. I would definitely say it's a kind of love song, but it's so fresh as a love song. It's not like any other love song to me. Oh, I am a lonely painter. I live in a box of paints. I'm frightened by the devil, and I'm drawn to those that aren't afraid. I remember that time you told me, you said, love is touching souls. Well, surely you touched mine, 'cause part of you pours out of me in these lines from time to time. Oh, you're in my blood like holy wine. You taste so bitter and so sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you, darling, and I would still be on my feet. Next, we have truly one of my favorite albums. I think this one would at least be in my top 20. If not my top 10. Be hard to pick, wouldn't it? Choose your top 10. We won't put ourselves through that kind of stress tonight. Now, this year, I'm sure you know that David Bowie died. He was an iconic and inimitable artist. And this is his album. the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the spiders from Mars. Every song on this album is just about perfect. There's really nothing much to criticize. Although I'm no critic, I just love it from start to finish. And I really like this kind of cover where it looks like this sort of moody, normal city streetscape, maybe. Sort of drab, even. And then you have the little glam rocker sharply contrasting against this drab town foil. I just think it's perfect. And then on the back, you have this kind of cocky image of a young David Bowie, or maybe he's in character as Ziggy Stardust, I don't know, but I just love his expression in this picture. He just looks so kind of sexy in a very strange, interesting way, and defiant and jaunty and cocky. But let me pull this out and show you these close-up pictures of the band members. It's a nice paper texture too. I absolutely love paper. I always have. So right here, we have very young David Bowie. He looks like an ingenue, kind of fresh-faced, androgynous beauty. So the songs on this album are Rock and Roll Suicide, 5 Years, Soul Love, Moon Age Daydream, Starman, Lady Stardust, Star, Hang On to Yourself, Ziggy Stardust, and Suffragette City. So, in honor of David Bowie, here is one of his great albums. And speaking of David Bowie, I have another album of his here called David Live. And I think the title of this one speaks for itself. It's a live album. It's got 2 records in it. And yeah. This kind of close-up image, which is a really interesting, cool, moody image, I think. I like the sparkly hair and a appearance of the lips that sort of stand out from this pitch black background. And then you can see full length image here. Great songs on this album. 1984, Rebel Rebel, Moon Age Daydream, Sweet Thing, Changes, Suffragette City, Aladdin Sane, All the Young Dudes, Cracked Actor, When You Rock and Roll With Me, Watch That Man, Knock on Wood, Diamond Dogs, Big Brother, Width of a Circle, Genie, and Rock and Roll Suicide. Next, we're moving into the 80s. These were all from the 1970s. This one, however, could be no, this is 70s, yeah. It says, this live album was called from performances on the 14th and 15th of July 1974 at the Tower Theatre, Philadelphia. It is complete and exact. No studio overdubs or re-recording of voices, instruments, or audience have been added, with the exception of several backing vocals due to loss of theater mic contact. So, authentic live sound right here. Back to this one, The Pretenders. Pretenders 2. And I love this album partially because when I was growing up, my parents loved The Pretenders. And they're just incredibly romantic people, and I guess they had listened to The Pretenders a lot when they first got together. And there are some really sweet love songs on this album that they used to listen to again and again. And as well as some other songs. The songs that I remember most, and probably are my most beloved songs from this album, are Message of Love, I Go to Sleep, Birds of Paradise, Talk of the Town, and Day After Day. Chrissy Hind has a great voice, and I love her kind of signature, almost like slow vibrato. She has a great tone to her voice. And she's just pretty much one of the coolest people ever. I mean, look at her. But interesting, super interesting as well. This is a great record. I'm trying to think how I would describe The Pretenders to someone who has never heard them. And I'm coming up empty-handed on my description because Chrissy Hynde's voice is just really singular, and it's kind of nice and deep and maybe even a little bit husky voice. Just full of feeling, and the music is also great. So, there you have it. And next, I have another one that reminds me a lot of being a kid, because my parents listened to this quite a bit. U2 Boy, an early U2 album. And some of the songs on this album are I Will Follow, Twilight, Into the Heart, The Electric Co. I like most of the songs on this album are great. Some of my favorite are The Electric Co. and I Will Follow. I Will Follow just has this kind of like earnestness and youthful urgency and energy that feels inspiring to listen to, I think. I love it. It's just very, like I said, earnest and heartfelt in a certain way. Kind of raw. One of my favorite U2 albums. Another early album. And there's this beautiful photograph on the front of the band members standing in front of some castle ruins. And I love that image. I really do. And I also really like the texture of this cover and the color. And I love the passion of this album. Kind of dreaminess of the album and the guitar parts. Just in my opinion. I used to listen to this when I was a kid. Anytime I just couldn't sleep or couldn't calm down when I was not a tiny kid, but maybe 12, 13. Listened to it so many times. But some of the songs on it are a sort of homecoming. Pride in the Name of Love, The Unforgettable Fire, Bad, and MLK. This album has a sound that's just purely its own. It's not really like what came before it or after it. Produced and engineered by, among one other, Brian Eno. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But I just love the sound of this album. It's a beautiful whole. Next and last of all, I have an album that is unfortunately too warped to play because some years ago I left it in the car. That was not smart because the sun warped it. I forgot it was in the car. But the reason why I took it out is that with my previous record video, so someone requested that I tap on some actual vinyl. So I didn't really want to do that on these other albums that I still play, but on an album that's not really playable, it's fine. So also, I love the cover texture of this album. It's My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. Again, probably in my top 20. I like the electric color of it, the cover, and the unfocused sort of neon brightness of it. The dreamy, unfocused photographs, I think, really fit with, again, with the swirly, impressionistic almost music of this record. I like that the vocals on this album are relatively quiet in the mix to what I'm used to hearing. And the feel of it, and the fact that it really stands as a whole. But now, sadly, I only have it on MP3. I mean, I could listen to it, and actually I have a few times, and the warp, in a certain way, adds something interesting to it, but it's not the same. But beautiful waxy texture, the cover paper. And this album, I think was from 1991. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you have a wonderful evening.